All right, guys, back at you today with part two. So in this one, we're going to probably try and tackle all the fab work that we have to do, or at least I should say, all the modifications that we have to make to the engine. So the first one I'm going to do while I'm waiting on some parts to come in is we have to change the way these intake manifolds are set up. So as I had said before, this kit is designed to run the engine on the front two cylinders and to use the back two cylinders to compress air. So obviously, if we're compressing air with the back two cylinders, we do not want fuel and air to go to them. So to do that, what we do is we cut off the front part of this port, or I'm sorry, I should say the back part of this port, and we're going to block this off with a piece of aluminum, like so, here, and then we're going to weld this pipe bung that right up here. And this will allow us to be able to weld on an air filter to go into the engine. One other modification we have to make is that there's a little slit right in there, which connects the two channels. That also has to be welded in. So I did this one first, just to make sure I had something of a rough technique down to take it apart. There's no real easy way to do this, at least not with the tools that I have. They say I just cut it with a hacksaw, so that's roughly what I did. I made a couple of marks down here, and then I used the hammer to knock them off. So anyhow, I'll go ahead and do a time lapse of how I did that, and maybe someone has a better suggestion, but it at least got the job done. So what we do is we start by just making a mark 3 inches up, right up here, and then we'll cut a fairly steep angle right in here to block that off. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get to it. All right, guys, so as you can see, that's not too painful. With the hacksaw, the aluminum's pretty easy to cut, so it's really not too bad. And it's pretty brittle because it looks like it's just cast. So as you can see, our block-off plate fits in here pretty good. You can see that that's why we were filing in here to get that sharp edge. If we didn't file that down, we'd be sticking up here and could potentially not get a good seal. So that helps us get that locked in a little bit better. I was trying to file and sand around in here. So when we cut it, this was sticking out a little bit. So now you can see it's a little bit better. There's still a little bit of room, but it'll be good enough. So, and then the other thing you want to remember is, again, when you get ready to weld these, do this right here. So I don't have the ability to weld aluminum. I just got a new welder, but I need to buy a spool gun for it if I was going to weld it. And then on top of that, I had to have to switch over to 100% argon gas. So between not wanting to buy a tank and a spool gun, I'm going to hold off on getting aluminum to weld and just go ask one of my buddies to weld it up for me. In case anyone was curious, these are the directions for this step. So you can see the first step, draw a 3-inch line from the manifold casting, and then the manifolds are sawed away with a hacksaw. So that's what we did there. We draw the line. You can see that that's them cutting that off. I don't know how they got such a nice cut here. I couldn't figure out a good way to get my hacksaw down in there, but maybe someone would have a better idea. And you can see that's them welding the bung on. That's them welding on the blanking plate. That's them filling in that gap that I'm telling you to not forget. And then that's it, all said and done. So that's what we're going to be aiming for and I'm going to go get someone else to weld that up. So we'll start on the next step soon. Alrighty guys, so originally I was going to have someone else weld these parts for me, but through a turn of events I ended up getting a spool gun and a tank of argon that I'm renting instead. So I decided to go ahead and give my hand at doing these. So I did one ahead of time just to see if I could do it. And while my welds are certainly hideous, it should be functional. So you can see we got our blank off plate right here. We got our bung welded on right here so we can attach our air filter. And then we had to block off this port and sand it down with a belt sander so that we can, so that way there's not a transfer of fuel and air. So we're gonna go ahead and do the next one now. So for prep work, the important thing with aluminum, from what I've gathered, is for it to be clean, clean, clean. Now, everything I say about this, take with a grain of salt, is that because you can see the quality of my welds. But that is my very first time welding anything aluminum, so for that, it is what it works. So anyway, so what we're starting to do here is I started to go around, sand this. So we want to try and get that all pretty clean. For these areas where I can't get into, I found that a wire brush seems to work pretty good to just get in here. We can get them, you just want to get them nice and shiny. You can see that cleans up pretty quick. And then from there, after we get that clean all the way around, then we're going to want to go ahead and clean it off with acetone. And then after we get it cleaned off with acetone, we're going to go ahead and preheat the metal. That's now this is all recommendations I've gotten off the internet. But we got that pretty shiny now. We want to get all that oxidation off and any impurities that are going to make it so that it doesn't want to weld. The hard part about aluminum is that it can be very full of impurities, and so that makes it so it doesn't want to adhere very well. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get that clamped in there. Now, when you're clamping this, you want to be careful. It is just cast aluminum. So I got a piece already cut right here to fit on here, like so. But again, before we do that, we're going to want to go ahead, get some acetone to clean this all up. Try and get any of those bits of sanded aluminum off. For these parts you saw right here, I just used a flap wheel, which works pretty good. Now the shame is with aluminum, it's going to clog everything it touches. So, you know, get yourself one of the cheap Harbor Freight flap wheels. Don't buy one of the nicer ones because it will ruin it. Same thing with the belt sander over there. I noticed that when I was trying to shape these pieces before, it just clogged up a whole strip of it. Now I'm going to have to replace the belt. So I from then on, I started to just shape it with a flap wheel. I noticed that if I did put wax on it beforehand, it seems like it made it so the aluminum didn't grip as bad. But anyway. All right, so we got that cleaned, and we have it sanded and prepped. So now we're going to go ahead and take our torch, try and get it up. Now from what was reading online, a lot of people were saying if you get up to 250 to 300 degrees, that seems to be ideal. I'm not able to get it that hot with this. I'm able to get it up to maybe about 200. Maybe if I spent enough time I would, but for what I'm doing, it seemed like that was good enough. So I do have this handy to help me, but if not, just go until you get it as hot as you can. All right, so we got our first part on here. A little bit nicer than the other one, but still obviously just a lot of globs. For my settings on this, I'm using a wire speed of 355 and 20 amps. Before I tried doing this at about 17. That's what I did my first one at, which was this one. And I feel like it was running a little cold. So this definitely seems to work better. I might be on the little bit of a high side for this, but I at least I know that I'm getting good fusion. So, all right. Next we'll go ahead and we'll do this little port in the middle. And for this, I found that it's easier to just take a file, try and clean it out in here. File's a little dirty. All right, and there we go. Now that's machined totally flat. So now we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up and get the next part welded in. All right, and there you have it. So this is our modified intake manifold. So if you have the stuff to weld aluminum, it's really not that difficult. It's really not that precise. That's the nice part about it. We're not doing any fine engineering here. All this is doing is just making sure that the air, instead of being pulled from the carburetor, is being pulled from the intake or the air filter. So nothing too complicated. And now we have both sets of our modified intake manifold. So they'll go one on each side, and this will make it so that the back cylinders of each side will pull air instead of pulling fuel. So, alrighty, on to the next step. Alright guys, so last time we were dealing with the engine case, we were getting it all perfectly clean, and we got it split apart, and so now we've got it roughly ready to go back together. So I went ahead and started doing some of this. When I split it apart, I ended up taking the camshaft out. So I got that, so that had to come out. And then after I started trying to put this back together, I realized it was going to be a lot easier to do on the engine stand because we still have these long studs in it. So in order to mount this on an engine stand and to put the camshaft in it, or the crankshaft in it, you have to take the flywheel off, which would have sat right here. Otherwise, you just don't have enough clearance, especially if you're using the stock transmission bolts as your mounting points. So, now just a couple things to note when you're putting this all back together. I wish I would have gotten a video of this, but I just couldn't get a good angle. So first thing is you're going to put I keep getting this mixed up, your crankshaft in first. So your crankshaft is going to have bearings that have to line up. So you can see in the manual here, you can see how there's that little dot in each one of these. Each of those have to be lined up with the bearing when you put those in. It's a little bit of a pain, but if you start on this side and start slowly working your way back, it's not too bad. Another thing that you're going to want to note is that on everything that is moving, you're going to want to put some assembly lube on it. Now, the crankshaft isn't too bad because since we're reusing the crankshaft with the bearings, it already has some oil on it. However, for your brand new camshaft and your brand new lifters, you're really going to want to do that because that's bare exposed metal. So when you get your lifters right out of the box, like they are right here, they're nice and they're shiny and they're very dry. So before you put those in there in the holes down here, you're going to want to give them a nice hefty coat. And the same thing with your camshaft here. So we got each of the surfaces that are going to be mating with other metal. So right here, 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 and here. We've got a nice healthy amount of the assembly lube. Now the reason you want to use assembly lube is that it's very sticky and it's designed to run on a fresh engine that hasn't had the oil pumping through this yet. So when you first turn over your engine, it's going to take a second before the oil gets to everything that it needs to. And so what this assembly lube will do is, in the meantime, it will make it so that nothing ever runs dry. Another thing you're going to want to note when you're putting this camshaft back in, that I didn't think about until now, is that you're going to want to make sure your oil pump's lined up right. That was holding me up for a little bit, and you can see it actually dinged up my bronze gear a little bit. Nothing too serious, but enough to make a little bit of metal shavings. But since this works as a worm gear, it can kind of slide. This can kind of slide in and out. So especially once you have it disassembled. So now that it's back in, it's in there firm. But you can see this is where the gear for your oil pump is right there. So you just want to make sure that that's connected right. Otherwise, it's not going to go down right. So now that we have this all back together, we got our lifters in. We're going to put the lifters in on the other side over here in these 4 spots. Again, with assembly lube. Same thing, we're going to put assembly lube in here. We're going to put it on each of the camshaft bearings. And then for the sealant going around this, we're going to use Permatex Aviation, if I can find where I left that bottle out. I just got it the other day. Well, you'll have to forgive me because I don't know where I put it right this second. But the Permatex Aviation is what most people seem to recommend for putting these back together. And then that's going to be a line that goes all the way around. Now, when you get ready to do that, something like this is a no-go. You're going to want to make sure that you have all the oil gone. So brake clean is going to be your friend here. Make sure you get it nice and dry. And you can see, while it still looks like there's imperfections in here, this is all perfectly smooth. I ended up going over it with Scotch-Brite and brake clean, and that seemed to have worked pretty good. So anyhow, with that being said, we're going to work on trying to put these 2 halves back together. Oh, and another thing to note too is you're going to want to replace these O-rings while you're at it. My rebuild kit came with it, and that came with the rebuild kit did come with the air compressor kit. But anyhow, you're just going to want to note that. So we'll hopefully get a video of these going back together, and we'll keep at it. Alright guys, so I'm getting ready to put this back together. I actually got this back together after about 3 hours of struggle, and but it was only after I finally removed all the sealant from it. So I just wanted to, before I put this back together, I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of tricks in it and something I noticed. So the hardest part that I had was getting all of these bearings to line up. And something that I eventually realized that was really screwing me up was that the engagement for the fuel pump, or for the oil pump, just kept, and the oil pump and distributor, I guess it's not the oil pump, I guess it's just for the distributor, the gear for that just kept popping out. So I ended up having to throw my distributor in here so that it would keep that gear engaged and it wouldn't keep falling out. So that was a big help. And then after I finally got that all sorted, and I finally got all of these dowels in those pins like I had pointed out before, even then, every time I bolted up and put it up to torque, it would lock up. So I got frustrated. I was done with it for the night. So I took carb cleaner. I cleaned off all the sealant around the crankcase. I said, for kicks and giggles, I'm just going to bolt it back up, and just to try and keep some debris out of it. And so when I torqued it down that time, it still spun freely. So I guess something must have gotten on one of these bearing surfaces, and when I did a thorough clean of it before at the end of the night, it worked. So I'm hoping that when I torque it down, we won't have any more issues this time. So I'm going to go ahead and get the sealant on it. So I did find it. This is the sealant that I use. That's what everybody on the low budget Beetle forum seems to say. It seems to be a popular favorite, so we're going to use that. Just so everyone can kind of see, in case you don't have your own manual, I'm just following the assembly guide here from the Volkswagen Beetle Climber manual. So this is the page. So if you need that information, you can go ahead and pause the video. So this is the important part down here. So you're going to install the washers and nuts. And then this is the tightening procedure. So there's that. And then this is last bit on this page. So this is going to be what we're going to follow. And just to show you in our assembly guide over here. And so these are just the steps. We'll go over that later. This in here. So again, just in case you need this, there you go. So that's the part that we're on. So, all right, well, we're gonna go ahead, put the sealant around the crankcase half and get them bolted together, and hopefully you can see that process. So. All right, guys, well, we got this all torqued all the way around. So we started by doing the two camshaft seal nuts first to 10 foot-pounds and then to 14. That Harbor Freight torque wrench that I have doesn't really like to do 10 foot-pounds very good. It's kind of hard to, it's really hard to feel it when it's that light. 14 it does much better at. But, so we did these two first, and we took these two center nuts up to 20 foot-pounds, and then up to 25 foot-pounds. Then we did these four big nuts at 20 foot-pounds, and then 25 foot-pounds. And then we did all the rest of the small bolts at 20 foot-pounds, and then, I'm sorry, at 10 foot-pounds, and then 14 foot-pounds. Though, looking at it just now, I realized that I forgot to do these right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do those now. I'll do those off camera. They're pretty simple. And then we'll be figuring out what our next step is. I am gonna guess that it's probably gonna be this, getting the gear oil pump back on, but we'll go over that in a bit. All right, guys, so a little bit of a screw up that I am here to share with you, which is that I realized after I tried to put the gear pump on that it would not fit in. So the climber manual didn't have anything to say about that. However, when I was rereading the instructions for this, it says to just do the top 6 nuts first to 25 foot-pounds. Make sure the crankshaft turns, does not, yada, yada, yada. Then replace the oil pump body using new gasket, and then do the rest of the nuts on the outside. So, anyhow, that's why it wouldn't fit in. So I went ahead and I loosened all the nuts again. And what do you know? Well, I just tested it and it fit in, but of course now that the camera's rolling, it ain't gonna want to. Now this is a brand new oil drive because I had the wrong kind of camshaft previously. I'll be honest, I looked at the two different oil pumps and I can't really tell the difference myself, but I've ordered the exact part number that the manual called for, so it's gotta be right. Now this does have timing marks on it. However, from everything I read online, they don't actually mean anything. Now, if someone knows otherwise, then please feel free to correct me. But I couldn't find anything that that was just one video that I watched that said they don't really matter. So I don't see how they would. Maybe it's more important if you have the automatic transmission. I don't really know. And then remember that this gets special sealed nuts. I didn't look to see if the rebuild kit has them, but if not, you can see these nuts that have the red sealant on them. But if it doesn't have fresh nuts, I'll probably go ahead and add more of that Permatex sealant to it. But I'll take a look and see what I got. So, alrighty. I'll just time lapse the rest of this and we'll go from there. Alright guys, so now that we got that case all back together and we got the oil pressure or oil pump back in, we're just going to go ahead and throw this oil filter back, or oil sump, I guess you'd call it, and strainer back on. It's pretty straightforward. you can see we just got our screen, gasket on one side, and then another gasket, and then our cover. So pretty straightforward. Throw these on here. That on there. Throw this on. And then these have these little copper crush washers. I do want to note that the kit did come with the new gaskets for this, so we are all set there. Did not come with new crush washers though, so you got to reuse your old ones. These are just a 10mm, and I'll have to look up what the torque spec is on them. I don't remember off the top of my head. Doesn't actually give a torque spec for in the manual here. It just says Titan. So I don't think torque spec really matters because it's not a moving component. But just so you know.